Have you ever noticed that there seems to be a voice inside your mind that remembers every mistake you've ever made, but somehow forgets almost every success? It remembers the opportunity that you missed, the time you embarrassed yourself, or the project that didn't work, the conversation you wish you could take back. And whenever you begin thinking about doing something meaningful, it always seems to have an opinion. Like, don't get your hopes up. You're probably not ready. Someone else could do it better. Maybe next year. What's strange is most of us never stop to ask ourselves where that voice came from. Because after hearing it enough years, it begins to sound like the truth. The real danger isn't that the voice exists. The real danger is believing in it. You weren't born believing you should stay small. No child takes their first steps and thinks, I better not try. I might look foolish. No, children reach. They experiment. They fall down. They get back up. And they do it again and again. But somewhere along the way, something changes. It might have been a criticism that stayed with you, a failure that hurt more than expected, a comparison that quietly convinced you someone else was naturally better, a moment of rejection, a moment of disappointment. None of those moments seem powerful enough on their own. But over time, they begin writing a script. Not all at once, but one sentence at a time. And eventually, without realizing it, you stop asking, what do I want? And begin asking, what if I fail again? That's how the voice grows stronger. Not because it's true, but because it's been repeated. And the more often something is repeated, the more familiar it becomes. The problem is that familiarity is not the same thing as truth. Tomorrow we will begin exploring what happens when you stop accepting every thought that enters into your mind as fact. Because the goal of this episode isn't to silence the voice. That may never happen. The goal is something much more powerful, to stop letting it make your decisions. Have you ever noticed the voice almost never begins with what is happening today? Instead, it quietly reaches into your past. It remembers the interview that you didn't get, or the presentation that didn't go as planned, the relationship that ended, the opportunity you let pass by, the project that never became what you hoped it would. It gathers those moments together and slowly begins telling you a story, not about what has happened, but about who you are. One mistake becomes, I'm just not good enough. One disappointment becomes, things never seem to work out for me. One failure becomes, this is probably how it will always be. And over time, those thoughts stop feeling like opinions. They begin feeling like facts. There's a reason for that. Your brain is constantly searching for patterns. It wants the world to make sense. If something painful happened once, it naturally becomes more alert to the possibility of it happening again. That instinct helped human beings survive for thousands of years, but surviving and growing are not always the same thing. Sometimes the mind becomes so focused on protecting you from another disappointment that it also protects you from another opportunity. Your past contains experiences. It contains lessons. It even contains mistakes. but it does not contain the final verdict about who you are. Only the voice tries to convince you that it does. And the longer you believe that story, the smaller your future quietly becomes. There is a strange thing about that voice. It is that after it rewrites your past, it immediately starts predicting your future. And it speaks with such incredible confidence. It says things like, "Don't bother applying." Or, "They probably will say no. Someone else is more qualified. You'll embarrass yourself. You're too late. You missed your chance years ago." Now listen carefully to those thoughts. They all have something in common. None of them are facts. They're predictions. Predictions about conversations that haven't even happened, opportunities that haven't appeared, people you haven't met, doors that haven't even opened yet. And somehow, the voice expects you to treat those predictions as certainty. What is even more remarkable is that the voice rarely predicts the best that can happen. It doesn't whisper, "Maybe this will be the opportunity that changes your life." Or, "Maybe you'll discover strength that you didn't know you had." Or, "Maybe this time it will be different." Instead, it almost always imagines the outcome that keeps you exactly where you are. So you stay silent. You don't volunteer. You don't begin. You don't share the idea. Not because the future has already been decided, but because you've accepted someone else's prediction. Except that someone is the voice inside your own mind. And every time you mistake its predictions for reality, you hand it the power to decide how much of your life you'll actually experience. Up to this point, we've talked about what the voice does. It borrows from your past. It tries to predict your future. And if we're not careful, it slowly begins shaping the decisions that we make. But here's the part that changes everything. Just because the voice speaks doesn't mean it has authority. Think about that for a moment. There are many voices we hear throughout our lives. There's advertisements that tell us what we need. Social media tells us what success should look like. Other people's opinions tell us who they think we are. We don't automatically believe every voice we hear. So why should we give our own internal voice that privilege? The voice is part of your experience, but it is not the highest authority over your life. It can remind you of a difficult moment. It can warn you about a possible outcome. It can even make you feel uncertain. But it cannot decide what you do next. Only you can do that. The mistake many of us make is treating every thought as though it deserves obedience. It does not. Some thoughts deserve attention. Others deserve questioning. The voice may speak first, but it doesn't have to speak last. And that means that every decision still belongs to you. Once you realize the voice isn't the final authority, something very interesting begins to happen. You stop accepting its statements automatically. You become curious. So when the voice says, "You'll probably fail," you can quietly ask, "What evidence do you have?" When it says, "You're not ready," you might ask, "What would help me become more ready?" When it whispers, someone else could do this better, you can respond, that may be true, but it doesn't answer whether I should begin. Notice what is changing. You're no longer arguing with the voice. You're examining it. And the questions have a remarkable way of exposing your assumptions. Sometimes the voice is pointing toward a real weakness. If that's true, then you found something that you can improve. But many times, the voice is simply repeating an old conclusion, long after the circumstances have changed. The person you were 5 years ago isn't the person sitting here today. You've gained experiences. You've learned. You've recovered from setbacks you once thought would define you. So perhaps the voice deserves to be updated as well. Not by pretending everything will work out perfectly, but by refusing to let yesterday write tomorrow without being challenged. Because growth doesn't begin the moment the voice becomes silent. Growth begins the moment you stop assuming it's always right. There is something that I would like for you to try tomorrow. Not next month, not when you feel more confident. Tomorrow. At some point during the day, the voice is going to speak. It may happen before a meeting, before making a phone call, before introducing yourself to someone new, before applying for something you've been putting off, or before beginning to work on something that actually matters to you. When it does, don't try to silence it. Don't argue with it. Simply notice it. Then ask yourself one question. Is this a fact or is this a prediction? That single question changes everything. Because facts deserve attention. Predictions deserve examination. If the voice says, you might not succeed, that is not a fact. It's a possibility. If it says, you failed before, that may be true, but it still doesn't tell you what happens next. Your future has never been written by a thought. It has been written by decisions. So, before the day is over, choose one action you've been postponing because of the voice. Not the biggest one, just the next one. Send an email. Start the application. Raise your hand. Make the phone call. Take the first step. Because every time you act on evidence instead of fear, you weaken the authority the voice once had. The truth is, the voice may never disappear completely. Most people spend their lives waiting for the day that they feel fearless. But courage has never required the absence of uncertainty. It has always required movement, despite it. The people you admire, the ones who built meaningful careers, healthy relationships, strong families, lasting businesses, or lives they generally respect, didn't arrive there because the voice stopped speaking. They arrived there because they stopped letting it make the final decision. That's an important difference. Your thoughts are part of your existence, your experience, but they're not your identity. Your past is part of your story. It is not your future. And one difficult moment, one rejection, one mistake, or one season of your life has never had the authority to decide who you become. only repeated choices can do that. Every ordinary decision you make, to show up, to begin, to try again, to speak, to learn, to continue, becomes evidence of a different story. Not the story the voice keeps repeating, the story you are actually living. And over time, those small decisions become something much greater. They become the person you're becoming. The voice that keeps you small will probably speak again tomorrow. The question isn't whether you will hear it. The question is whether you will automatically believe it. If you're wanting to stay relevant in a world where doubt, comparison, and fear constantly competes for your attention, then learn to question the voice before you obey it. Because your future will not be determined by every thought that enters your mind. It will be shaped by the choices you continue to make after hearing them. And if you would like to have help to make those changes, subscribe. This is D.B. Lewis, and I will see you in the next one.